Can you tell us who you are and when and where you were born?
Yeah, Nancy Wert, and I was born in May 22nd, 58 in Milton, Ontario.
And were you involved in Junior Farmers before you got into the ministry's Department of Extension?
Actually, interestingly enough, no. I was very, very involved in the 4-H program, a prominent 4-H member, right from age 12 through till 21 at the time, but I really had very little knowledge or appreciation of the Junior Farmer program, and it really wasn't until I started my tenure with the ministry that and even then, because when I graduated from Guelph in '81, my position was in Middlesex County as a 4-H extension assistant, because that's when the ministry was still hiring graduates from Guelph to put in various the bigger counties like Graham, Bruce, and Middlesex had an extension person, and even my role there was still predominantly 4-H, and they still had the assistant ag rep position, and that person tended to have the connection to the Middlesex junior farmers. And I was there from '81 to '83 in that extension role, and then I was relocated. The ministry was going through a whole transformation and reorganizing, and staff was being moved around, and at that time I was moved to be positioned in Guelph, but I was actually working out of the Waterloo region OMAF office, and again in the more predominantly with the 4-H program, and then I had a little bit of half-time in the Guelph head office, the agricultural office there in Guelph on Ignatius College, and I helped the girl at that time, Barb Elves, write some 4-H lessons. So again, I was really tied to 4-H. It really wasn't until I applied for the position, the Secretary-Treasurer of Junior Farmers, that I got my eyes open to that association and that it existed. Yeah.
How can you talk about how you got into the ministry in the first place, straight out of university?
Yeah, straight out of grad. I can remember Ken Knox was on my interview team, and I believe him and Janet Horner interviewed that day at Guelph University, and they're just going around, and I applied for what they called the Extension Assistant Program, and didn't know where I'd be located if I was accepted, and I got the call, and then I was headed to Middlesex County, so I worked out of the London office for 2 years, from '81 to '83. And then '83 to '85 I was Waterloo half-time and Guelph Ag Center half-time, and then in '85 is when I took over the position with the ministry, appointed to person to the Junior Farmer Association, as well as the Ontario Horticultural Association. So it wasn't just junior farmers. Again, I had a dual portfolio there. So.
Okay. Can you talk about the application process for the Secretary-Treasurer position with JFAO?
Yeah, it was just somebody approached me, a co-worker, and said, Nancy, this job, opening's there. You might want to consider, because that way then I would be concentrated more, like in Guelph. I'd have provincial territory to cover, but at least my home base office would always be Guelph. I wouldn't be floating back and forth between two different offices. And they said, you'd probably be good at this and might want to consider it. So that's when I had to start doing a little bit of research and talk to some people, and people that I probably knew were involved in Halton region, my home area, that junior farmers that. And of course, at that time, you couldn't just Google anything and up come junior farmers and learn everything about it, right? So I prepared myself that way about the association and working with volunteers and leadership development, organizational development. That was kind of it was called a Secretary-Treasurer's position at the time. And even though that was the title, I really wasn't the treasurer. I reported financially for them, but the ministry still had a person that was appointed as the treasurer person, somebody with the accounting background in that. I was just the liaison between the association and that person. So in the interview process, we just basically sat around the table. They, ask your history of how you're involved in 4-H and, some stuff like that, and typical resume you put together, and a few questions, and then a couple days later I got a phone call. So
just one interview?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
And from there, how did you get baptized into Junior Farmers?
Very fast, very quickly, because this all happened just a little before Christmas, so it wasn't taking effect till the new year, like January 1st, basically, right? So I was tying up some things and finishing up some things in Waterloo and with my other position, and then rolling into this one. Well, of course, January is you're starting to get ready for March conference, and what's a March conference, right? Like, and what do you mean I'm putting rooming lists together, and who are all these people, right? So, and everything's coming into me, because it's all the application forms, registration forms, all the counties are sending their delegates. The registration forms all come into the provincial office, and then I'm trying to sort through files and get a feel for, who was doing what before me and where are things, and get to know the accounting side of it, and And then there's the PD meetings I was going off to, and I was going off to March conference planning meetings. I was also traveling a fair bit on the road, and yeah, plus I was also trying to learn my other little portion, the Ontario Horticulture Association. But the March conference, I remember like this was panic for me because this was huge, and I just had heard enough about what a wonderful experience it would be, but I just knew it was going to be a lot of work. And then we had 200-300 delegates, and then my first banquet was 900 people. Yeah. My first banquet I coordinated for the association was 900 people. Yeah. So, and you want to, you're going to Constellation Hotel there on the airstrip, not too far from Toronto Pearson Airport. That's where the conference was. So you just want to make sure everything's going to be working right and tickety boo, and was a lot, yeah. And that's how I got baptized.
Did you have someone training or overshadowing you, or?
Not really. No. My manager at the time was Peter Fleming. And he had a fairly good, feel. He'd never done the secretary-treasurer's role, and I'm not really, sure if there was an interim person. I think Hal Thompson was the one before me, but I really was just jump in and get going and sort this all out and get in, organize myself. And I had lots of people I could go to. Janet Horner, Amber Underwood was still there at the time, and the hallway was full of history and people that had some connection to the association over the years. Carm Hamilton would be another one, Rod Stork. Lots of people I could ask, but I was the one doing. So that's why I had to figure it all out. So.
And how long were you involved with Junior Farmers provincially?
I was their secretary-treasurer position from, that would be 85 till probably about mid-88. And then that's when the ministry, again, was reorganizing, changing things. And then I was what they called the rural organization specialist. So I still was attached to the association, but more in a consulting leadership role. I no longer was the administrator person for their programs and the March conference. That's when autonomy was becoming a big thing with the ministry and in a lot of these volunteer organizations that we were sort of letting that apron string out a little further away from the ministry in terms of providing a paid salaried person to do their administration. We were just sort of be there in the background coaching and helping them to do these things on their own. So
was your role somewhat phased out then?
As a secretary-treasurer from the ministry side, yes. Now I remember being involved with the hiring of, I believe Sue Visser was my person that replaced me. I was involved with that process in the association, and Janet Horner was somebody we got in as well. Again, lots of history there, and a great person that she'd done the role as well, and she knew what the association kind of needed to keep it going. So not that I was ruled out as a secretary treasurer, but then I was put into a new role with the association. So I would work closer with the committees and to try to organize their events. So I was trying to teach them some of the skills I had learned in terms of organizational development, leadership training, that kind of stuff, yeah.
Did you have staff under you?
I had, yeah, I guess you would say I would have had somebody that if I had stuff that needed done, printed up, typed up, whatever, I had a secretary, but she sort of worked for our unit, so Peter Fleming was my manager, but within that would be myself for the junior farmers and another girl with the Horticulture Association, and, there'd be 2 or 3 of us. Resource development was part of that pod as well, so our person that would do our typing in that would do for all of us. It wasn't just directly to me, so.
What were the most significant or interesting or exciting or important things that happened during Junior Farmers during your tenure?
Well, I guess because things are changing with the relationship between the ministry and junior farmers, and good or bad, it happened. There wasn't much we could do we were just trying to make it as easy as possible, for everybody involved, the association in particular, so that it was an easy transition. And that autonomy was going to be theirs, and it was going to be their association to do as they wish, right? So they just that was difficult, and it was, but it's exciting at the same time. So you have to decide, is there a challenge or see the opportunity in the challenge kind of thing, right? So, and then the other thing I started to notice was that was when the membership was starting to decrease. Even from the 5 years that I was there, from 83 or 85 to 90, there was a huge change in the membership numbers. We noticed that in our programs that we're putting on for the junior farmers, whether it was leadership camp or other thing, communication workshops, the numbers just weren't there as they had been in the past as well. So
What were the numbers?
I believe the membership was around 8,000 when I was first started, and I think we're about 5 when I left. So
Was there any direct causes that were found?
nothing that we could, we put think tanks on, and try to do analysis as to what was going on in the county level, but why, just too many things, and we see it even more and more today. There's just too many options out there, and more kids getting further removed from the grassroots of the agricultural portfolio. So it just we were starting to feel it at the membership level as well. So
Was it the counties across the board that were all seeing decreases, or was it one part of Ontario more than the other?
Well, it was interesting because we used to consider the powerhouse counties like up in the Middlesex, the larger counties, Grey, Bruce, that area, and then it kind of take a shift that actually Zone 1 down here, the eastern, would become, they weren't probably as magnificent in numbers, but in terms of participation and enthusiasm, and that it kind of was a shift across the province. But we started to slowly see, like Middlesex, would have had, numerous clubs, like 20, 25 clubs. The numbers within the clubs were dropping off first, and then the actual clubs were disappearing. So they were getting down in numbers like to maybe 10 or 12 in a county. So that's what we first started to notice, was the clubs were still maintaining, but the membership within those clubs were decreasing, and then eventually those clubs just were folding. The county association was still holding on, but the number of clubs in a county were starting to diminish. So
Were there a change in events or a change in workshops?
I haven't really kept up with it, but I think a lot of the same workshops and same activities still exist today, and because they were good, like they proved themselves over time. It's just that the bodies weren't there to fill the roles and memberships. Like even our March conference and the number of provincial directors, like we pretty much had a provincial director in just about every county across the province. And if you look at a picture today of a PD compared to 85, 86, it is about quite a reduced number of PDs across the province, right? So and there were zone directors, and then the executive, and then the committee. So yeah.
With your role with the horticultural group, was there anything similar happening in that sense?
Mm-hmm. They weren't broken down so much into individual clubs and membership, but just membership numbers were decreasing as well. It's a totally different portfolio, different age group, different clientele, different focus group, eh? So, but it just seemed to be happening even in 4-H. We were starting to see the numbers, and then they played out a little bit around with their ages to decrease the age that you could come in at to help with numbers, and that's still what they're playing with. So,
how did the junior farmer members and the junior farmer provincial board, how did they feel about these changes, and how the government relations was changing?
Well, I know it was concerning. Not that their funding was never tied to their a per member basis. So okay, because you got $20 per member, it was never tied anything like that. It was just, I think the ministry was really looking at their directives and their time staff involved, and even our county's OMAF offices were going through a big change, and there just wasn't going to be the staff in those individual. Like not every county has one anymore, right? And at one time it did. Every county had their own OMAF office, so it was concern, and I think just because the ministry was really into leadership development and trying to get the future leaders of the industry, right? And it just was happening. So I don't know. Nobody could really put their thumb on to why it was happening or how to turn it around, how to get it. New directives, new advertising, new programs, whatever.
How did the JFAO board and individual clubs, how did they tackle this?
Well, each one would, as a provincial association, because I would be more sitting at that level, they certainly were always looking to, is there something that they could be doing differently at the grassroots level, and then trying to get that message back down. And then they're always looking for feedback, and that's where March conference was very, they'd have small table discussions and try to put their finger on what was happening. But I mean, this is like 25 years ago, so I can't really think of anything that comes to the surface as to what prompted it. Or
what about exciting things that happened in those 5 years? What stands out?
Oh gosh, there's lots of exciting. There's some great programs that I was involved with. Or leadership camp was phenomenal. Like it was a ministry directive, and but it was just such a really wonderful program, and what we did with those kids in a week, and we just took them in a totally different environment, and they left their home life, just buried it somewhere deep, and forgot about it, when they got off the bus, and then you kind of have to do that you're going back home scenario with them at the end to kind of, bring them back to reality. But you just always saw some really, really cool things change in dynamics with people in that course of time. And we often talked about what the gray child or the gray delegate. Lots of times at camps, whether it be 4-H or junior farmers, you'd have those kids that were demanded a lot of your time and attention. Like they were either troublemakers or just didn't want to participate, didn't want to be there. So you put a little energy into them, and then you have the other ones that are so quiet, so soft-spoken, you don't even know they exist, right? And then you get the ones in the middle that are neither. So you're always trying to draw the ones that are quiet. You're trying to calm down the ones that are, and then and it was always those ones in the middle that we really, by the end of the week, the staff would try to identify, because they're the ones that just needed that little extra encouragement, or that little extra, to bring them out. And they'd be the ones at the end of the week that would be up in front of the entire camp, and whether we were at a talent show and they're the ones that probably you would have forgot about. You wouldn't even have identified with them if you didn't really sort of, at the end. We always had staff meetings every morning before the day started, and that's what we did. We would identify those grade kids in the middle, because those are the ones that we knew would go back to a county, and someday hopefully be the president of the club, and might be hopefully someday on the provincial board. But if you didn't work with them over that course, and we only had a short week to work with everybody, but lots of those other kids that were radical and that kind of toned down and came into being at the same level with the whole group. Those really, really quiet, shy ones came up as well, but that middle group was the ones that would really excel. So,
what time of year was camp?
We always held it the first full week in September, because we always packed up from Guelph and headed out on Labor Day weekend. And why it started that time of year, I couldn't tell you, but it worked. It was the first week of fall. Now, some kids had an issue with college and university, and we might have to write nice little letters for them to present, but it was always the first full week of September, just after the kids were all going back to school.
How many members got to go to camp?
We usually had it around 100. There might be 105 or 106, but usually we would take 100, and we tried to allocate it per county as well, so that not all one county would send 20, but if a county, like Grey County with a big membership, had 4 or 5 that were interested, and another county was only going to send 1, well then yeah, because we wanted to keep for the logistics of the whole program and how we broke them into, we used clans at junior farmer camp, so there'd be like the Scottish theme of the Thompson clan and the Browns and the McNeils, and yeah, so we wanted to make sure our clans were broken up fairly evenly. So and then we had leadership groups in the morning, and group dynamics up for the rest of the day, and committee work. They were interdispersed amongst each other for committees as well, for planning, flag raising, flag lowering, vespers at night, whatever. So
what is vespers?
Vespers was sort of the quiet time at night, just as the sun was going down. We would traipse off. We'd all meet at main camp, and then we'd all follow, and we'd traipse off into just this nice wooded little area that we could watch over the lake. It was at I believe it was Irondale, Bark Lake in Irondale, Ontario, and the sun would just be coming down, and it was perfectly timed out, that the little program, and it could just be some poems or sayings or a couple songs, that whatever that group, whoever was in charge of Vespers that night, whatever they wanted to put on for the program, it was their time, and the rest of us followed along. And then we always had quiet time as the sun went down, and some people would just sit and reflect on the days, others would just get up and go when the program was over. Some would sit and write notes, and it was just quiet time. And then we had from say 7:30 till about 9 as our own time, and then we came back for evening program, which again another group had organized. So it would be maybe a theme night, it could be Hawaiian night, it could be a crazy hair night, it could be whatever the theme that organizing group wanted to come up with. And then we were told what to wear or not to wear, or bring or take, and then the party went on. So
what were some of the traditions at leadership camp?
Oh, there was lots of really good traditions, like no elbows on the table. That was huge.
What happens if you did?
If you're caught, there was a little chant about, like Barkley, Barkley, if you're able, get your elbows off the table. This is not a horse's stable, but a first-class dining table. Stand up. Oh, God, I can still repeat that today. Oh, that's scary. So you would have to stand up, and then the group would decide, okay, you're going to stand up on your chair, and you're either going to have to sing a song that the group might sing with you, and then you might have to do the actions, or you might have to push a penny across the floor with your nose, or, yeah. So no elbows on the table. That was huge. In being the Scottish theme, we wore headbands in the different colors. So there might be the yellow, the browns, the blues, the greens, to represent that clan. And then the name tag was right on front. It would just say Barkley really big, and then your last name kind of smaller, and then what county you were representing and what clan you're in. So, and you wore them faithfully, like every day. You did not appear in the morning without that headband on. And the first thing we did in the morning was flag raising, and so we all met wherever the flagpole was, and everybody stood in their respective clans. The committee looking after whatever clan was doing flag raising would take the program for flag raising. He sees me sitting here. And we just continue through flag raising, and then it was off to breakfast. And there's always an order, a pecking order, and it's sort of we called it the circle of leadership. So that's how you always knew. So if the Thompson clan started here, then everybody else would follow around, and the next day it might be the McNeil clan, and then we would follow around. So you always knew who was to follow who. So and then there was Lady Lion, which I got to play a few times with the kids as.
What is Lady Lion?
That would be like the overall camp director. So, and I would have a staff of probably about 10, like ministry staff, and some volunteers, like there would be some provincial office staff as well as some county staff, and then there might be one or two volunteers we take along, because we always had to have a nurse, and usually a ministry staff or a county staff aren't the nurse, so we'd have to pull in somebody that might be a past delegate, or somebody's wife or whatever that had those skills that we could take them along. And then they were sort of under me, and then we planned the day. Like we had lots of planning meetings and a training, a 2.5 day training session to get ready for camp program. And then also we were facilitators. So when we had our leadership sessions in the morning, each staff person had a leadership group. And we all had the same binder with all the leadership material, whether it's on, time management skills, working with volunteers, how to make presentations, public speaking, whatever the leadership component was or dynamics, everybody had the same binder to work from. And so each day was a different theme, and then you had your leadership group. And again, it was a mishmash of all the clans. So that was one time that the clans were mixed up. And the same thing when they were organizing, you always sat with your clan for lunch and for all the meals, and if you were doing Vespers, that would be a mishmash of the different groups. So anyways, lots of really cool traditions and lots of things that, it just stayed at camp.
What did Lady Lion do? I'm interested in this role.
Okay, so I would start the day usually, and usually start it and end it and keep things flowing. And I didn't particularly have a facilitator group, but I would visit the facilitator group just to see, everybody's on track, any issues, any problems. Kind of led staff meetings. Every morning we had a staff meeting, and here's the priorities for today, or just kind of kept things flowing and going, and coordinated. So, and worked with the camp staff as well to make sure that if we were going canoeing, got everything in check. If we were going to send on camping, got everything, because we sent them out for one night. They would go out in their respective clans to a spot around the lake for just one night. Like they only left about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They had to be back by 4 o'clock the next day, right? But we'd make sure they had all the gear that they needed and all coordinate, and off they go around the lake. Yeah, then the staff would have their little camp out at the beach as well. So.
And what type of traditions did you have for a send-off at the end?
Okay, the very, very last night was called the Ceilidh. And that's where the staff got to really use a lot of their imagination and creativity, and we would take the lead with the program, and we'd have the kids. Well, first of all, the beginning of the week we'll also have our ceremony where we're buying into this clan thing, right? Everybody goes in a big circle into this big open area with a big bonfire, and that's when we put on our headbands. So there's a whole thing you would read off about the tradition of the camp program, and by being here, they're accepting the traditions of, so no longer are you, a person from such and such, you're a member of this clan and a member of your team, right? And at the end of the week, we always had this Ceilidh, which was, as I said, the staff's warped way of sometimes scaring the kids, or because again, we'd lead them through these paths, and we'd have people poking out, throwing things at them, and they're poking out their legs, grabbing them or whatever. And I'll never forget the year that the staff scared the bejeebies out of me. They buried, like literally buried, one of my staff in the sand on the beach. Like they used straws up through his nose, and I was, just walking around, and we were talking about something, and all of a sudden this hand comes up out of the sand and grabs my leg. Well, I will never forget that as long as I live. Anyways, we had a lot of fun. A lot of good things came out of camp, but we also had a lot of fun. So then after the KLA would be the closing ceremony. So we led them, down this dark pathway back to the same facility where we had the opening ceremony just how many days before, and that's where they take off their headbands, and now they're no longer a part of the camp thing. There's no more clans, there's no more committees, there's no more leadership groups. You're back as a part of the big group, right? And that always was hard for a lot of the kids, because they got really caught up in the whole make-believe thing all week, and then it's like, wow, then it's over. And friendships, wonderful friendships were made over the course of that week, and lots of them still remember being at camp with so-and-so, and still keep in touch with those people today. And as I said, lots of stuff that goes on at camp, nobody would ever know about. So.
What were some of the other important duties that were part of your role?
Outside of sort of organizing or coordinating kind of thing, I guess I was a liaison between the association and the ministry. So I would go to the director at times, and say, in the junior farmers, I think we need to be putting a little bit more resources in this direction. And I think that's when the ministry was starting to say that, yeah, maybe that's what we should be doing more of, anyways, not just the doing part, the administrative. Maybe we need to be giving them more resources and leadership and developmental training and that kind of stuff, so that they themselves become good leaders. Like what we were doing was good, but there's lots of days I just spent shuffling registrations and making rooming lists, and I wasn't sitting in on their committee meetings, because I was writing up minutes from all these board meetings, and because that was my role as a secretary. I was the recording secretary at all the PD meetings and the executive meetings, right? So there's lots of times I never got into the committee meetings to see, well, how is the planning for summer games going, or are there any issues? And lots of them were, I had closer resources to me, and there I'm sitting doing minutes, So I think that's maybe when the ministry started to say that, yeah, somebody else could be doing minutes. What we need to be doing is put a leadership role. And that's when they were, changing their portfolio as well into leadership development, leadership and organizational development, and not just administering, right? So, not that that wasn't a good part for them, but I think there was lots of times that we could have been offering more and direction if I was able to be into those meetings, or going from one little room to the next to see how the flow of the meeting was going, and chairmanship roles. And some of those kids struggled with chairing a meeting. They'd never done that before, because they didn't have any skills on chairing a meeting. And here all of a sudden they're a provincial director, and that's all new to them. And so the orientation, even though they got a new PD orientation, I'm sure it was overwhelming, just as it was the first day I walked into the office in Guelph, and they said, March conference is coming up, and you got all this to do. So, yeah.
How often do you take work home with you?
A lot, or I never left. I never left the office very early. Like lots of my coworkers were gone by 5, and lots of nights I was still at Ignatius College till midnight. Yeah, just because now that's me. I'm I like to be organized, and if I found it quiet, and if I could really, spread things all out and get things, I'd rather do it then till midnight than to try to come back in tomorrow morning when either the phone's ringing or somebody else is stopping in, or I have another meeting to go to with my own, like my manager would say, okay, we have to have a meeting to discuss something else that really wasn't junior farmer related, but so then I couldn't get back to that. So lots of nights I just stayed afterwards and continued on. But yeah, my briefcase usually came home packed with stuff as well. Yeah, so.
What do you feel is your most significant contribution to JFAO and the junior farmers in general?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I did anything more wonderful than my predecessors. Like when I think of Carm Hamilton and Janet Horner and Rod Stork and all those great people and what they had contributed. I don't know, because sometimes I think that, maybe I wasn't the nice one because I was in that I was the last one sort of thing in terms of being a ministry person, and they took a totally different road after me. But I guess I like to think or hope that I helped them take that road a little bit easier than just say waving goodbye at the door and you're on your own sort of thing. So I hope that there was a good little transition in there, that we worked together well. Any of the executives I was involved with, there was always a good working relationship with them. So
You had about 5 different provincial presidents you worked with?
correct, that'd be about right. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about each of the 5?
Yeah, all different, and that was the exciting and challenging thing for me, to always remind myself, okay, that's the way that one liked to do it, but this one, he or she will have their own way and their own stamp that they want to put on the association, and they'll have their own goals and aspirations. So we can't always be thinking the way it was done, and everybody gets in a rut like that. Any organization, association kind of gets into a little bit of a rut thinking that this is the only way we can do it. But no, I would say that that was, again, part of my nurturing role, was to try to say, like, the floor is yours, and if they would come to me and say, well, what do you think? I'd say, well, what do you think? I would put it back to them even before I had a chance to say, because I didn't want them to, sometimes I was riding on the tails of the ones before them as well, and say, well, that's how it was done, but I didn't want to say that to them. I wanted them to think it through and process it themselves, because lots of good things came out of their own thinking, and it was just exciting to see them grow as an individual, as the president of the association, and it wasn't all easy for them. It wasn't all easy for any of us, but it was really exciting for them.
Was Jim the first president you worked with, or was Sandra?
No, Jim would have been. He was vice president. When I came in, when I came in, Stuart Budd would have been the president. But see, that because I came in January, and
Changeover hadn't happened.
The changeover hadn't quite happened, and the tradition then was the vice president organized that March conference, so that I got to work with Jim probably even closer and more than I did with Stuart as president. Like, Stuart was closer to me being in Guelph, and he was in Paris, Paris, Ontario. So he would come up and we'd go through things and make sure I was okay with what was happening to be ready for. But it was really Jim down in Avonmore that was the conference coordinator, because he was the vice president, and then that changeover came that March. So I had a little bit of Stuart Budd, and then it was Jim, and then it was Sandra after that. Yeah.
Do you have any funny stories about Stuart?
Oh, geez, no. No, he was pretty clean. No, he was a really good president for the short term, anything that I heard about, so, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we'll skip Jim. We'll talk about Jim later. Do you have any stories you want to talk about Sandra?
No, her and I traveled. We lived together a little bit in Guelph, because we were really close in proximity, so it was really nice having Sandra just down the road, because she was living in Guelph at the time, so that was really, really handy. And then we actually lived together for a part of that time too, so no, we traveled a lot of roads together. So.
Okay, what about Alan?
Again, getting further and further. That was when the transition was starting to take place. So Sandra was probably my last official. I was the secretary treasurer for Sandra, and then when Alan was coming in, Alan would have started to work with Sue Visser and myself. I was sort of still there coaching, but Sue was the one doing the minutes then, and doing any of the registration for any of the programming, the March conference and that. So, and again, Al was down here in Renfrew, Eastern Ontario, so proximity to the office, a little bit of a challenge, but we didn't have Skype and all that great stuff that we do now, so we spent a lot of time on Ma Bell, so, yeah.
What were the phone bills like?
Well, the ministry would be huge, I would think, and even sometimes my personal ones were bad enough, but yeah, because we did everything by phone, and lots of times, like when I was trying to get Jim, I knew what his day was like because of the farm. Lots of times I couldn't catch up with him till 10 o'clock at night. So I'd be called from the office. That's why lots of times I worked, I could still get the president sort of thing. So, yeah.
Well, talking about Jim, the next question is, was there anyone you met in junior farmers that became a significant part of your life?
Yeah, fairly significant. He's my significant other. Yeah, so, yeah, Jim and I, we were married in '90, and that's when I would have left the ministry, and then my role with the association as well. So, yeah, we kind of grew close together over time, and we both really loved the association and what it had to offer, and yeah, we were married, and here we are, 22 years later almost. So. Was
there anyone else, other special people that you really became close with during your time with the extension staff?
With the extension staff, like I had lots of good co-workers in the county offices as well. You know, that sometimes we worked together on programs, or they would call me about, you know, some junior farmer questions, especially when we were changing our role into the more leadership organization development role. And they would call and say, you know, Nancy, I'm trying to work with my Brant County junior farmers, or, you know, because that's what we're trying to encourage, filtering out to the staff as well across the province, was that they take a very similar role. I was working with the provincial level, but we wanted our county staff to take that leadership specialist role as well with the organizations, and not just junior farmers, all the, you know, the cattlemen's, the milk committee, whatever associations. That was sort of what we're trying to earmark ourselves as, was specialist in leadership and training and organizational development. So so often I had lots of you know, great calls and conversations, and sometimes I'd go out to meet with them in their county office. And but there'd be so many to name, I'd hate to, in case I forgot somebody, but lots of the county staff and lots of them are still there today, you know, even after I've long gone. But some of the ones I remember working with quite closely are still in some of the counties. So,
were there any junior farmers that, you know, became a big part of your life? You know, were there any specific individuals you'd like to talk about?
well, there's still, like, we have lots of our close circles of friends. Geographically, not close at all, like, but they're somewhere in the province. But I mean,
Came close this way.
yeah, exactly, in our heart, and they still are to this day. Like Grant McBurchie in Grey County, you know, Jim's been his best man. He emceed our wedding. Our wedding was like a really big junior farmer party. And the funny thing, what we did was, when we set up our tables at our wedding, we used every county from Guelph to Stormont, so from Wellington to Stormont, that I would travel through, you know, to make the trip down. So then that's, you might be sitting at, you know, Durham, you know, yeah, it was kind of cute. We sat Frontenac County, and yeah, so each of the tables had a different county name to it. And there was lots of junior farmer presence. To this day, Marilyn Sewell Kelly still works with the ministry, and our families are very close. Her and her children and husband have come down here many summers, parked their camper in the backyard of the farm, and you know, and it all really started from junior farmers. Doug Murphy's another example. Stuart and Jennifer Budd were, you know, close with them. Also, Jennifer, Stuart's wife Jennifer, her brother is married to Jim's sister Valerie, that's here from Scotland. So you know, met them on the International UK Exchange, and so yeah. So we have lots of really, really strong relationships and great friends across the province, and really it all started here in junior farmers. Right? They often say you go to junior farmers to find your other mates, so I love how to keep up with that.
That's good to know. It didn't just stay with members.
That's right. That part didn't die off.
What was one of the most craziest experiences you had as a secretary treasurer? One that could only have happened to junior farmers and somehow happened to you.
Oh gosh.
You can name two if you want.
Oh no, gotta think of one. Craziest experience. Wow. I can't think off the top of my head.
Okay.
Other than that hand coming up out of that sand. Crazy or freaky, I don't know about that. That only happened to me, and I don't know why they picked on me that night to do it, but...
If you had something to talk about for saying, this is my legacy, this is what, you know, I did that I can remember that as a secretary treasurer, what would that be?
That I did for the association?
That you did, that's how you're going to be remembered. You know, how you want to be known by. What you passed on in junior farmers.
I guess I'd like to be remembered as easy to work with. Yep. And it wasn't always easy situations. Like there was, you know, when we were going through that transition, it was difficult because I was concerned for the association. I totally didn't want to give up what I was doing, although at the time, you know, you realize, okay, I've done this enough, I've done enough minutes, I want to move on myself and grow. I guess I just hope that any of the presidents or the executives or the PDs that I work with just remember that we had a good working relationship. I never tried to, you know, be difficult, never really tried to make sure that they just did what I said, that I wanted them to really think things through and it be their year, it be their time and not Nancy's. So
How did your involvement with junior farmers change you as a person?
It certainly broadened my exposure to what's out there. Like I was just from small town Milton, which was 17,000 at the time when I graduated, so that's small, but not what it is today by any means. But I certainly got to travel a lot with the association and meet some terrific people, and be in some sticky situations and have to wiggle my way out of them, or I learned to public speak, presentations, be organized. There was lots of skills that I learned by working with the association, for sure.
What do you think the benefit of junior farmers is to Ontario youth?
I certainly know the benefits that it can project because I saw them firsthand by working with the association. And I'm sorry that my children won't benefit from those because the association just isn't as strong or as prominent as it was, so many years ago. And it's just because, unfortunately, there's just so many things out there. Like when I was in 4-H, like that was my one time a month out. That was it. Like now these kids, they can't decide what they're going to do every night of the week because there's just so many choices, right? So unfortunately, the association had so many good things that it could offer, and I think it still does. Unfortunately, maybe the smaller scale, but just the meeting of the people and the networking, the opportunities, the people that 20 years down the road you'll still meet somewhere. And no, we did get our one son to a leadership camp program, and he has connections from that program. He's never been involved in junior farmers, but we got him to a 4-H camp, and he knew one other person, and that was one of Marilyn Sewell's sons was going that same camp. And we thought, okay, that'll be a good out because Pat's not a very outgoing type of guy, and we thought, okay, we can send him. He'll have somebody that he can be comfortable with. And as the week grew on, the process took place, and he became very comfortable, and he himself was a different kid when he came home a week later. So that's the kind of stuff that you like to see happen to these kids, if they get the opportunity to get outside of the county and the club and get to these provincial opportunities.
Okay. Taking that question I asked and turning it a little bit, what would you say the importance of junior farmers is for Ontario?
I think is a perfect place for agricultural leaders to be groomed and developed. Unfortunately, our agricultural portfolio is very small anymore as well, right? So, whether we're going to see many agricultural leaders come out of junior farmers, but doesn't say that they can't be in politics, doesn't mean they can't be in a corporate world somewhere. It's getting them hooked and into junior farmers from the base level now, right? So doesn't mean at one time it was if you're on a farm, if you're grew up on a farm, you had that inkling to be in 4-H and junior farmers, and that's where there's fewer and fewer of us anymore, right? So we still have to sell the association as a good place to get those sort of leadership skills, and kind of like a mini advanced ag leadership program, and maybe downplay the ag side of it, but they'll give them great skills to carry on to do other wonderful things with, even if they're just their own business, organizational skills, communication skills, dealing with difficult people. Like you don't have to be from a farm to have all that, Those are just good common sense skills that every person can learn from and benefit from. So and I think junior farmers, could be a really good tool to go into school programs and teach that in classrooms, because you don't get that out of textbook, right? So recruit, put on mini programs in high schools. Got a captivated audience. So
what have you done with yourself since leaving the extension branch and the ministry?
Okay, so I left in '90 when Jim and I were married, and I had originally just taken like a 6-month kind of secondment in anticipation that maybe something might open up in Eastern Ontario for me, but then that just didn't transpire. So then I officially resigned 6 months after that Jim and I were married, and pretty much since that, been busy. Between the dairy farm and the 4 boys and raising them, and I've done lots of stuff here locally, volunteering, which because I was involved in 4-H and junior farmers, has helped me to put back into the community. So like between the church and our fair board and our community association, and coaching sports and tugging our boys along to different things. For the past 5 years, I was the dairy educator here for Stormont County. So I would be going into classrooms, doing the dairy presentations, and teaching children about the benefits of milk and nutrition, and again, I credit my even in being able to think about doing that from my start from 4-H and then my work with the ministry and junior farmers for sure.
And now?
Now, right now, because the boys, you put all this time into the children and then they grow up and they start to leave you, I find, but we got 2 in college, and one in experience a program, a volunteer program, but it's called Katima Vic, and Christopher is still in grade 11. So we find our staff here is dwindling, so I'm needed here more than I ever am. So I find I tend to do the calf management part of the farm, so I do all the whatever it takes to take care of those baby calves and the bookwork and stuff like that, and keep everybody sort of in check and coordinate things. And so again, my skills are still coming back. I still do minutes at, we have a community center we just built here a couple of years ago, so we have Jim chairs it, and I sort of do the recording of the minutes, and every once a month we have meetings as a management committee and decide what priorities are need for the community center. And yeah, so again, you know, you're always kind of tinkling, your fingers are always tinkling, that kind of stuff, eh? So.
Okay. Going back to junior farmers for a second, what was one of the hardest decisions that you had to make as secretary treasurer?
As the secretary treasurer, hardest decision was leaving. Yeah, I struggled. Not that I love my husband, and I knew I had to leave, but probably because I just had a really great run with the ministry. Like started in '81, and I was leaving in '90, and it was 9 great years, and I had lots of great friends up there as well as co-workers, and yeah, that's probably the toughest part.
And is there anything else you want to say about your experiences that I missed on asking?
Well, not that I can think of. We sure covered a lot, eh?
Yeah.
No, I just wish any of present and hopefully future junior farmers the world of wonder and excitement, and keep at it, because you can't take a horse to the water, make it drink, and you can't move a mountain in a day, and but if you just chip away at these things, and everything goes in a cycle, and I listened about new clubs starting up, and I still get the annual reports, and I read it thoroughly, and I get to see who's marrying who, and who's connected, and who's still doing what or whatever, and what workshops are still. So it's nice to know that the base is still there. If we could certainly make it more dynamic in terms of numbers or whatever, but you have to remember that even if you're just doing it for a few, you're still doing it. You're doing good. So hopefully these clubs will continue on, and the cycle continues. So
That's great.
good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.